Dear guests, the event is now in session. Thank you. ضيوفنا الأعزاء ستبدأ الجلسة الآن. شكراً.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your presence today. This conference is part of Sorbonne University Abu Dhabi conference program for COP28 and is a testament to the engagement of the university for sustainability and climate change. Today, we would like to welcome Dr. David Guéry, researcher at the Mediation Laboratory, which is a geography laboratory in Sorbonne University in Paris, to discuss Oasis Agri-Urban Metabolism as a source of Paleo-Innovation for coping with global warming. Before I welcome him on stage, I would like to extend my thanks to ECD Pavilion, who is hosting us, and to Her Excellency Rim Ibrahim Al-Hashimi for her support. Thank you, and Dr. David Guéry, please, if you would like to join me on stage.
Thank you. Can I have my presentation, please? Oh, click. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank Sorbonne Abu Dhabi University for this invitation, and I would like to thank you very much for coming today. My topic today is to discuss with you the complex relationship between globalization, adaptation to global warming, and sustainability. I'm a geographer, and I would like to analyze with you the fruitful perspectives of Paleo-Innovation or Paleo-Inspiration, how the analysis of the past societies enables us to think about solutions that can overcome the contemporary challenges of global warming. To do this, I'm going to take a geo-historical approach. So I will analyze the territorial organization of the past and how they have evolved over time. My starting point is the oasis. Today, oasis cities are often presented as folklorized places, but we must remember that these territorial systems are at the heart of ancient world linking Africa, Asia, and Europe. Here, you can see a map of 1154 drawn by Muhammad al-Idrisi for Roger of Sicily. This map is very enlightening because it shows the centrality of the Arab region, which links Asia to Africa and to Europe. What interests us in this world is the importance of the land routes that complement the sea routes. There was a major communication route from what is now Morocco all the way to China, connecting what we call the gold and incense route. The central route took the form of an east-west axis to which were linked multiple north-south routes that crossed the Great Arid Desert. Al-Idrisi described these routes from oasis to oasis, giving the number of days needed to travel between each one and describing the most prestigious of them. So we need to look beyond the landscape. Here, the mighty city of Sijil Massa in Morocco, which was one of the centers of globalization in the 13th century and probably had more than 100,000 inhabitants before it suffered a series of collapse. Next to it, the immense oasis of Al-Asa in Saudi, which has seen to be continued development of the city close to the irrigated land. Connected to these major sites, we find hundreds of small oasis towns with varied profiles, but which constantly articulate a dense and fortified habitat with irrigated farmland where multiple species are associated. The oasis is by no means a natural configuration. It's the product of a very heavy development work by human communities who have allied themselves with plants to guarantee their common survival in an extreme context of high heat coupled with high aridity. Along this route, from oasis city to oasis city, people circulate, as do techniques, scientific, hydraulic, agronomic, and construction knowledge, as well as a variety of plants via seeds and animals. So today, I invite you to go beyond aesthetic beauty and carry out a scientific analysis of all the technical innovation that make up the oasis to draw lessons for future development. Let's go back to the very root of the word oasis, which in Coptic means to dwell, and is therefore a place where it's possible to live. Oasis towns, therefore, be seen as sentinel sites that provide us information about global warming, but also as places that enable us to think about the future of towns in the context of accelerated global warming, even in Europe, even in North America. Oasis cities are our future. The solution lies in the setting up an agri-urban metabolism. In other words, an organization between human and non-humans that combines a high human population density with a high plant and animal density, where the city is consubstantial with its agriculture. The agri-urban model has two characteristics that were vital to human survival. It allows microclimates to be established. It enables soil fertility and productivity to be maintained for millennia. To support my argument, I will draw on a series of action research projects that I have been coordinating over the last 10 years, mainly in Morocco and Tunisia, bringing together archaeologists, agronomists, anthropologists, architects, urban planners, geographers, historians, and sociologists. Establishing microclimates. It will be the first lesson. The first thing to remember is that oasis cities are located in the driest region of the planet, the Great Desert stretching from the Sahara to China via the Arabian Peninsula. So how can human beings have lived there for several millennia now? The first thing is the ability to overcome geophysical conditions through hydraulics. Let's take a look at the Sentinel-2 satellite images, which allow us to monitor the planet on a very regular basis, giving us data on vegetation cover and soil moisture. Oasis cities are built around springs or by draining the surface aquifers. The water was then distributed by a gravity system of canals. In these photographs taken in the beginning of the 20th century in Tizni in Morocco and in Nefta in Tunisia, we can see that drained water can only be understood with the presence of plants, in particular date palms, and above all dense housing nearby. The oasis town differ from agriculture in an arid environment. It's a form of life. It creates a microclimate in which human beings can survive. In the agricultural plot, sure, but also in the cafe, but also in the dense earth and stone neighborhood where children play despite the intense heat. Let's schematize to understand. The oasis city is a series of filters, primarily architectural filters. It combines enclosed gardens with a fortified town. The two are linked by a major gate, one or two gates. The gardens constitute the first area of enclosure through their walls and the constant surveillance of irrigation from one or more basins. The gate is tightly controlled day and night by guards who check who enters and who leaves. In the town, certain places remain accessible only to their inhabitants, such as the impasse or alleyway for the family home. The Oasis city is therefore marked by a series of architectural filters between the open and the closed. And it's going to manage porosity. These architectural filters also filter out light, which is seen as a threat. The desert is a place where people cannot escape the sun's scorching rays. Here, the gardens are sheltered by palm trees, which consume a lot of water, but create a protective shade. This shade is central to the residential area. The alleyways are often partly covered, while the house has a central courtyard that is sometimes deliberately small to allow for shade. These architectural features act as climatic filters, helping to cool a locality. The desert environment is dominated by scorching winds for several months of the year. These winds are then slowed down by the successive feature of the plants, fortification also, narrow street, and chicane gates. In the end, the inhabitants just feel a light, refreshing breeze. The Oasis city is a porous system where porosity allows life to exist. We need to revisit the historical logic of agri-urbanism. What is desirable? A microclimate that allows a sustainable way of life. Why is it viable? Because it is based on vital interspecific connection where human beings are allied to plants. Why is it feasible? Because the Oasis city relies on a local workforce and local collected materials. However, the 20th century saw the emergence of a new industrial urban logic. What has become desirable is to copy the urban planning models of temperate Western societies. This can be achieved by mobilizing manpower and highly processed exogenous materials such as cement and steel. But is it viable? It's not viable because it means using increasing quantities of fossil fuels to produce the materials, transport them, and above all, to cool the new buildings, which need to be airtight to survive. The new systems are cut off from their environment and are seen as being able to be transposed to all climatic conditions using fossil fuels. A cognitive dissonance then emerges. The new buildings are off the ground, with no link to their environment, while at the same time mobilizing Oasis imagination. How we can question this fresco, which features women in traditional dress against an air-conditioned concrete building in Tiznit in Morocco. How are we to think about this other fresco, which present an ideal vision of the historical aesthetic of the Oasis, with potted plant in the heart of an old district of the city of Tiznit, undergoing a complete transformation where concrete is gradually replacing the earth building. The city metabolism is changing. The climatic houses are being demolished in favor of cement construction that are unsuitable to the climate. In the ruins, the inhabitants are keeping a few plants alive. The new urban leisure area are based on international standards. The paved square with a few plants can only be used in the cooler hours of the day and most of the time during the night. Even the sports field on artificial ground are just used at the cooler time of the day and more of the time during the night. The multiple filters disappear in a logic between the public space, open to all winds, and the closed, airtight private space. Microclimatic effects disappear, and worse, the city becomes a place where climatic effects are amplified, creating an island of heat and pollution. The transposition of the Western metropolis model to the desert context generates a form of mutilated life, to use the expression of the philosopher Adorno. Inhabitants are losing the places where they can socialize and are becoming increasingly isolated. Specific identities, practices, and memories dissolve, with no new opportunities to fill the void created by environmental disjunction. Finally, a vicious cycle is at work, with residents having to emit more and more greenhouse gas in order to survive on a daily basis. Artificially air conditioning their homes reinforce the effects of heat domes and global climate imbalances. However, to study the Oasis cities allow us to propose effective alternatives. It is possible to draw on historical lessons to propose contemporary development. What are our findings? The Oasis city is consubstantial with its irrigated agricultural perimeter, constituting a rich and perennial way of life. Heritage is a vast legacy from which communities choose what to pass on. The seriousness of the inhabitants, tenuous but tenacious daily practices. What direction should we take? To favor porosities and filtration devices, supporting the resilience of agri-urban practices, and also regeneration of technical, social, and environmental ecosystem. We have documented micro-developments following the logic of new urban planning. Here, in Tiznit, this fountain is linked to the spring dedicated to the historic irrigation of the oasis. It immediately created a feeling of well-being in a district undergoing major transformation. The stone and earth material used together with the local plants accentuate the feeling of comfort. The project has created multiple microspaces for children and elderly women who make it their own collective space. After 8 years, the site is still very attractive with a proliferation of appropriation processes. For example, the gates installed by a neighbor act as an attraction while reducing bad behaviors such as littering and damage. It is therefore possible to propose a different trajectory for the 21st century. From now on, it is a matter of switching back to this interstitial system that allow agri-urban approach to be reintegrated into the city in the face of global warming. The aim is to regenerate areas that have been often abandoned or polluted using plant forms in the context of multi-specific alliance. We need to stitch up the city, which has disintegrated as a result of opportunities linked to fossil fuels. Regeneration means tackling the negative commons, the abandoned and polluted places that dot the industrial city, and integrating agri-urban approach. So our second lesson is maintaining fertility. Fertility is a central issue. We are currently experiencing a collapse in soil fertility and a consequent increase in greenhouse gas per food calorie produced. This collapse in fertility should be contrasted with the incredible fertility of Oasis agricultural soil, even so they are located in arid region. Even in competition with Californian-style irrigated agriculture developed all around the world, Oasis towns maintain their farming practices. Here in Tiznit, you can see olive trees, barley, alfalfa, and sorghum. Many of these cultivated plant varieties are fodder plants, which means they are used for livestock farming. Using the example of Tiznit, a town with 11,000 inhabitants in 1971 and 85,000 today, it is possible to study the transformation of agri-urban metabolism over centuries. On the aerial photograph taken in 1971, the town can be seen at the heart of historic agri-urban metabolic system that has been established in the Oasis since the 17th century. The Oasis city developed with major water investment, which created a large irrigated area to the north of the fortified village to the south. The contribution of exogenous plants domesticated thousands of kilometers away, such as date palms, cereals, barley, wheat, sorghum, maize, vegetable, citrus tree, and olive trees, resulted in a rich agriculture. This agriculture feeds the city, its people, and its animals, which in turn fertilize the city by collecting manure for the farming plant. This system is supplemented by small farms that on the surface of the aquifer. In 2021, 50 years later, all this has been profoundly transformed. The city is experiencing a very strong demographic growth. Its population has multiplied by 8. The new neighborhoods were built in cement. Its development is being driven by the influx of materials, energy, consumer goods, and food from outside. The city shifted to an industrial metabolism where it developed using elements from all over the world. Cement, steel, tar, plastic, food are coming from all over the world. And also, agricultural water is now used for drinking water. Its agriculture is therefore dependent on groundwater wells with external equipment as motor-driven pumps and fossil fuels or solar panels. The city produces a lot of waste and effluent. What used to be recyclable now becomes a source of pollution and soil degradation. To manage this waste, the city has to sacrifice ever larger areas for landfill and wastewater, but this space spill over into their surroundings. The agri-urban metabolism is then threatened by the industrial urban metabolism. A vicious circle emerges. The city growth is increasingly dependent on supplies of external materials, which pollute the urban environment more and more and increase the city dependence on external materials. Close to residential areas, waste is concentrated on former farmland. Pollution particularly affects former farmland, where residents used to dump recyclable waste. Historic building materials such as earth, stone, and wood were reused. Household waste such as manure and compost fed the fields. Nowadays, plastic waste and cement rubble contaminate the plots. During the rare but violent rains, all this waste is drained and redeposited in the plots, contaminating more and more land. Untreated wastewater also create new problems. Nitrophilous plants proliferate. They provide shelter to undesirable animals such as wild boar, which threaten crops. And above all, if they are not maintained properly, they can dry during summertime. And when you have a very hot weather, it becomes a threat because it's breeding grounds for fires. And now, most of the oases are burning. There are, however, solutions for developing alternative approach. One of these is the reuse of wastewater. The water treatment plant is equipped with a tertiary filtration system to ensure that the quality of the water meets WHO health standards. An association of farmers, often from historic farming families, ensure distribution via a network of canals and terminals. The land is cleared of rubble and shaped into plots. Purified wastewater is used to grow fodder crops such as alfalfa and sorghum, and as well as maize. The quality of the highly nutrient-rich treated water ensure very high yields in the oasis environments, with permanent alfalfa cultivation of up to 8 cuts per year. With Sentinel-2 satellite, it is possible to observe a changeover between 2017 and 2023. In 2017, water from the wastewater treatment plant flowed northwards, creating proliferation of uncultivated vegetation. You can see the water treatment plant and north forward. But now, if you look in 2023, you can see that the water is now massively used by the terminals, reducing uncultivated vegetation for new plants regenerated from heavily polluted areas. And you can see south, you have more and more plots into the polluted areas. Now, if you are going to have a tracking of soil moisture, we can see a shift from wastewater discharge in 2017 to use by the plot in 2023. Regeneration will then take place plot by plot. Farmers are even replanting olive trees on land that have been abandoned for almost 40 years. However, the increase in the number of highly productive forage plots also implies the development of an animal breeding industry. Some households have sheep and goats, but many are turning to dairy cattle, rearing in stalls. With the development of integrated dairy cooperatives at a regional level. While some households prefer local breeds, others choose imported cows of the Primolstein breed. A new agri-business system is emerging. The increasing scarcity of resources is forcing us to move away from the industrial waste model and rethink the circular logic within the framework of compliance with standards. This configuration observed in the oasis town of Tiznit is particularly important today for European towns, especially in France, where conflicts over water for agriculture producing livestock fields are particularly brutal. Farmers now in France want to access to treated wastewater so that they can continue to grow maize during summer. The energy balance of the system, therefore, appears to be much lower, reducing transport costs while guaranteeing compliance with health standards. However, switching requires the use of a specific technology and reduces the choice, leading to options that are sometimes limited. Here, initially, the farmer chose a forage and dairy farming model that can be discussed. Once the system has been set up, perhaps the model chosen will be different or more varied, as can be seen, for example, with the emergence of a tree breeding and beekeeping model. So to conclude, the Oasis cities are therefore places for reflection on paleo-innovation. So how past innovation are opportunities for the present. Some innovation can be transported to the present day, using local material instead of cement concrete. The use of historical plant varieties adapted to extreme climatic conditions. The interweaving of the city and agriculture. Others are inspired by the dynamics of paleo-inspiration. What is paleo-inspiration? It's taking inspiration from the past to develop and adapt contemporary technologies, like the reuse of treated wastewater to develop new livestock farming and maintain soil fertility without inputs and with highly adapted plants. The system of reuse wastewater is, in fact, new system, but the organization by the farmers is the old traditional organization. So I will end with this idea of creativity. And we need to have an open-ended thinking, where the Oasis city should enable us to redevelop our imagination for viable and desirable futures. The challenge for the future is to develop perma-urbanism and perma-architecture that, as in the Oasis city, can guarantee quality of life over the very long term with the least possible use of fossil fuels. We are not going to erase fossil fuels, but we need to use it less as possible. Far from opposing tradition and modernity, which has no sense. Far to opposing low-tech and high-tech, which has no sense. We need to invent the processes which are the best suited to local conditions. This solution makes it possible to deal with the negative legacies of the industrial urban model, because it's the main challenge today for the cities. It's to deal with all these polluted areas, to deal with all this waste, and how we are going to deal with it. We need to think about regeneration, because it's there with the most challenging for the future. And what is regeneration? Is to think how we are going to regenerate microclimates. And when we are going to regenerate all these microclimates, we are going to organize, the society will be able to do better for the macroclimates. Because we don't have to forget this main issue. We are not going to challenge macroclimates like that. And the microclimates is just full of microclimates. So if we want to act today, is to deal every time as we can on these microclimates, as has done this Oasis society since ages. Thank you for... So if you have any question,
Good morning, and thank you for your interesting presentation. My name is Frank van Dern. I work for Deloitte at the Sustainability and Climate Change Department. I have a series of questions. I'm not expecting you to reply all of them, but I just also wanted to throw them as food for thought. I think it was a very interesting model. My first question, and I'm going to just throw them all and just as a food for thought, but the way of applying this model is it going back to the idea of like trying the city to be self-sustained. That's the first one. The second, because particularly we're talking about agri-urban business. And we know that if we're going to go out of this model of self-isolate of self-sustainable, like what's happening with cities or elements that also need to provide agricultural and lifestyle-like products for other cities or other places, and therefore are subject to a lot of pressure in terms of production, cost benefit, and also linked to what you're saying, trying to use the varieties which are locally suitable. How do you then be able to deliver what you expected as a center of production, into the market? And the third thing is, I think there's a very good element about human behavior. So I think there's two main components. One is one of you said, which is you need to learn from the past, try to adapt to your local requirements in terms of weather, in terms of also soil conditions, water conditions. But at the same, there's a big element around human behavior. How do you, let's say, make sure that the population adapts to the adaptation that you're putting in the city as well? And the fourth one is about investment. So all innovation comes with a cost, and particularly for agribusiness, there's always the same sort of claim, which is I'm under a lot of pressure, a lot of cost-benefit relations, a lot of reduction in terms of cost. So how am I capable of putting on the investment, not having the burden of spending all the money to be able to conduct all the different adaptations and innovations that you were mentioning?
Thank you. So now I have 2 hours to answer. No, it's very interesting point. First, why we are interested in Oasis? Because they are not isolated. They will never be isolated. They are at the central main historical roots, and there were a lot of investment. An Oasis does not exist without an investment, and this investment come from international trade of gold and spices. So when you look at Oasis today, you have to think that the family, they were traders, and they were in Sigil Massa, they were trading with India, and they were able to have a very complex system of trading. So it's why it's very interesting, because it's investment. Or what's happened, it's this investment totally changed because the main trade is organized from the port now. But you have still investment of the family of the Oasis. And sometimes you have also governmental investment. So for innovation, it's true, if you want to respect some standards, you have innovation that you need a very strong investment. For example, if you want to respect the health standards for reuse water, you need investment. It's very expensive to have a water treatment plant, and you need investment to be safe for human health. But what is very interesting in this issue, it's the farmers. They are into the market because they are producing alfalfa for cows to have milk, and the milk is sold at the national market of Morocco. So it's not the category, you can think that all these farmers are able to produce for the market. But in the same time, they are also producing for their families. They are producing product that they like, that they want to enjoy. For example, when you are going to have sheep for the festivity of Eid Kabir, Eid al-Hada, you need to produce your own sheep because it's very important for the family. So today we have to connect that the family, they are in the same time into the market, and they are on the same time thinking about the well-being of their own family. The other issue, it's about eco-construction. It's sure that the people, they say, okay, we are going to build in cement, because we are not thinking about the cost of this building when we need to cool it. But if you have a proper issue with a good local materials, they prefer to build in local materials. They are using cement for the main structure, and they are going to do mixed with local materials. So, and when you look at the behaviors, the main issue, it's when you are going to ask to the people, most of the time you are going to have men between 20 to 40 years old or 50 years old, we are going to answer. Not kids, not women, not the elderly. So, and these men, they don't care about the public space because they have a job. They are in their car or in their desk, and they have no time to think because they are working full day. But now what is very interesting in the Oasis cities, They have a very important population who work abroad in big cities like Casablanca or Tunis, or even in Europe, in Paris or London. And they come back to the cities when they are retired. And when they are retired, they always speak about their memories of the public space. Because now that they are retired, they want to take a coffee, to go to their garden, to have all this relationship. And what is very interesting, it's when you arrive to manage the Oasis, into the farmers, you are going to have retired people coming just to enjoy time and to have a small garden, but they are going to be a part of the group, of the community, with younger people who are going to be really in a new spirit of entrepreneurship, who want to do business. And together, they are going to do something more suitable, but also more sustainable. Because if you have a crisis, the retired people, they don't really care about the profit. And they are going to help the younger who are going to be the professional farmers, and they are going to be able to pass the crisis. And especially actually because you have a huge crisis about food all over the world and the price increase, and it's why it's very sustainable. So we need to think how we can be connected to the global world with all this issue, but to be more sustainable, we need to think in the same time at the local level. And it's very an issue for the investment, because most of the time you think the investment for the big business. And you say, okay, I will do something for big farmers, for agro-business. But the agro-business is very weak, because if you have a crisis, it will collapse. And we are full of place with agro-business who is going to collapse because they can't be able to have enough cash flow to survive. But when you have a lot of farmers, for example, you have 83 farmers actually using this reused water, is more sustainable because they are able to organize themselves. We have time for last question, because I see the 2 minutes.
What's the best way to stop using cement and starting building with local components? Is it like teaching the architect students or in the agroeconomy field? Or like how do you change the minds of people?
I will say first, we have to change totally the use of computers. Because the main problem, it's engineering. If you look how you have the construction, you are going to have engineers. We are going to give you the guarantee about insurance of the building. But they use computers and they use programs. And these programs were built in a European or an American context. And the main problem, it's when you want to try to guarantee for example, the temperature effect of the filters. If you have cement coming from the industry, it's very simple. But if you have local materials with stones, with earth, or with other, it's very difficult. Because first, you need to do your own measure by your own first, to say, okay, this stone or this earth has these specific qualities. And if you use the local materials, all stones are different. And all earth has different. And if you mixed, it's much more complicated. So actually, the main issue is to work on, to come back to the real engineering process. So the engineers, they have to study the context and to do their own measure on the site and to say, okay, now I can put a guarantee because I know that this stone is suitable, and if you don't have the money to do that, they say, for me, it's impossible. because I can't register it in my programs, in my software. And actually, it's a big issue in all the country. The software are unable to integrate it. So you have a lot of planes all over the world. So change of software first. I think it's the timing is says it's finished. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. I just want to inform you that we will have another conference at 12 about art market, heritage, and eco-responsibility for those who are interested in staying.